Hey everybody, ronarray here, and as you probably know, GG made spears in Path of Exile 2 incredibly strong. So here is my detailed guide, showcasing how to adapt spear gameplay for Monk. The build has an amazing clear, destroying screens with just one tap, but also is pretty tanky, reaching up to 8 or even 10k of energy shield and having up to 50% evasion on top of it. So in this video, I'm going to showcase how you can build it as well. What are the differences against similar Amazon or even Deadeye options in gems and item picks, and what to focus on. I'm also going to show both expensive and cheaper setups, so you can adapt it to your needs. Use the timestamps for particular topics as usual, and let's go. So let's start with the skills. And the first one is Lightning Spear. It's your main clearing skill. When you're shooting one big spear, it's going to also shoot a lot of small lightning balls split into different enemies from the enemies that you hit with your main spear. We're going to use a few supports and way to generate frenzy charges while clearing, because that way we're going to have more lightning bolts to clear better. The first support is Vault. Vault is going to provide us voltaic charge per every meter traveled, so we need to run around and make sure that icon up here will showcase 30. I recommend to use the spear when you have at least 25-30 charges, because that way you're going to have more damage and it's going to work much better for clearing. Vault is very important support and you always should use it first. The next one that I absolutely love is Deliberation. It's going to give you 20% of more damage while making you a little slower at the moment when you're using the skill. I think it's pretty good for a spear because that way it will be easier to aim, especially if you're playing on the mouse. Primal Armament as the next support is going to provide 25% of more weapon elemental damage, and it just provides damage by itself and there is nothing tricky to it. Perpetual Charge here is to help us to not remove charges. That way maintaining charges should be significantly easier, especially in the basic setup if you lack the damage. And the last support is Ambush. I think Ambush here is mostly because we are playing Monk. For other types of builds such as Amazons, you can have higher crit chance by itself, but for Monk, using Ambush is absolutely mandatory. I recommend to reach up to 50% main critical hit chance. That way with Ambush, when we are hitting full life enemies, your critical hit chance is going to be 100%. That way you will always crit and utilize your Monk bonuses as well, mostly being Thunderma enemies, because Thunderma enemies will give you critical hits, ignore non-negative enemy monster elemental resistance. So that way Ambush is pretty important and you can move it even a little to the left if you have only 4 supports. The next skill is Stormlance, and that's the main skill that we're going to use to fight single target, mostly rares if you're not killing them immediately just with the spear, and bosses such as Pinnacles. I currently have only 4 sockets for it, but if you can add the 5 it will be even better. So for the Stormlance, we're going to use a Scatter Shot, because we're shooting the spear like that, and spears are staying in the ground. Lightning Infusion is pretty good for it too, because most of our damage is anyway coming from lightning. Overextend is going to provide pretty great critical damage bonus while we are using the skill, and Dazed is not such a big issue, especially against bosses. It's just going to make you a little more prone to stun, and most of the time you're dodging bosses attacks anyway. And the last support that I'm currently using is Execute. Execute provides great 50% more damage with hits against enemies that are low life. Low life is currently around 35%, and you will get that bonus when you're finishing the boss off. Since most of the bosses will showcase better mechanics once their life is almost depleted, Execute is working pretty nice to speed up the process. As the last support, I probably would recommend to use Primal Armament against Pinnacles or Deliberation. You can take any of those and just move it to the last sockets when you're doing Pinnacles or very hard bosses in some particular cases. The next skill that we are using is Heart of Thunder. Heart of Thunder right here mostly just to provide inner weight. Every time when we are killing an enemy with Heart of Thunder which is shocked, we are going to receive 35% of damage as lightning damage, so inner weight is absolutely great. The rest of the supports is not really that important. I'm using Deadly Herald right here, so it will deal a little more damage, and Long Shot because pretty often Heart of Thunder used on the enemies far away. And here comes the difference in the setup. between expensive and non-expensive versions, so I'm going to explain those separately. So here, your pick will heavily depend on a budget. I'm going to start with a budget version and then explain very expensive version that I'm currently running. So for a budget version, we're going to use Combat Frenzy as a main way to generate charges. That way you just need to activate Combat Frenzy together with Profusion, and that's pretty much it. You will also need to use Kitoko's Current Jeweled Gloves right here, because Kitoko's Current is going to give you lightning damage from hits, contributes to electrocution buildup. That way you're going to constantly electrocute the enemies. And when you're electrocuting enemies, Combat Frenzy is going to provide you charges that you're going to spend while using your Lightning Spear or even Stormlance. The biggest issue with such setup is that when you're fighting bosses, you can't generate charges properly, because Kitoko's is not really electrocuting bosses that fast. So for the bosses, you will need to use Sniper Mark and maintain your single target while using your Stormlance and Sniper Mark. Stormlance and Sniper Mark. So in such setup, Sniper Mark should be just used by itself as a separate skill, and you will need to click the button. Make sure if you're using that setup that you're clicking Sniper Mark after every 2 hits of Stormlance, because that way you're going to eat the Sniper Mark, receive the charge, blow up the next, and then you will need to use Sniper Mark again. However, if your budget is higher and you are clearing monsters without a lot of issues and you don't think that you need a huge bonus for clear, there is a way how we can automate that, especially against bosses, harder single target and stuff like this. In such case, we are offing Combat Frenzy and activating Cast on Critical, because Cast on Critical can provide auto Sniper Mark to most of the enemies, but make sure that when you're fighting just white monsters, you're not going to mark them, and that way you're not going to receive charges. So your clear with white monsters will be mostly without charges and will be a little less impressive, but you will also be able to replace the gloves, so you can run gloves like that with a lot of lightning, physical damage, some resistances, or even intelligence or dexterity, making your stat setup significantly easier than running Kitoko's. So you can change Kitoko's that way and just run Cast on Critical together with Sniper Mark, Profusion, Impetus and Ingenuity. And there's also another cool thing that we can use because we are a monk, but I'm going to showcase a little later in the Ascendancy part. Also, make sure that both Cast on Critical and Combat Frenzy, if you're using it, got quality, because for Combat Frenzy you're going to receive a huge chance to gain additional charge while you're using Combat Frenzy, and for Cast on Critical you're going to receive 10% reduced reservation, which is a pretty nice bonus too, and make sure you're using it. Also, 4 supports are not that important for Cast on Critical. You can try to drop Impetus or even Ingenuity because it's not going to change a lot. But if you're using Cast on Critical, you can just spam Stormlance on the enemy at single target. It's going to just Sniper Mark it by itself, and it's going to work just fine in the most cases. So pick one out of those 2 options, Kitoko and Combat Frenzy, or Cast on Critical and Rare Gloves, based on your budget and how you currently feeling with your clear. I think on lower budget and with not that strong weapon, I definitely recommend Combat Frenzy and Kitoko. Moving forward, since we are playing Monk, we have a lot of Spirit, and I can pretty much utilize the Blink right here too. I'm preferring Blink over Rhoa, because compared to Amazons, we're not really getting stuns that often. We have a huge stun threshold, and there's not a lot of reasons for us to use Rhoa. Moving faster around feels pretty good, and on Rhoa you're not really getting slower when you're throwing your spears, but I'm practically throwing only 1 spear in a few seconds, and blinking around feels absolutely amazing, so I currently still prefer to use Blink. As in bonuses to the Blink, I'm using Arcane Tempo, Clarity and Precision. If you have less Spirit, you can drop Clarity if your mana is fine, or you can drop Precision as well, because having higher accuracy rating is not that important for Monk, but I prefer to use it because there is not a lot of downsides to it, and I have 10 additional Spirit to utilize that. The next skill is Barrage, and Barrage here is just to provide a little additional bonus at some time. I'm using Barrage with Premeditation because it gives skill empowered by supported skills deal 15% more damage, And another cool bonus here is Inhibitor. Inhibitor gives you support skills cannot consume charges. So when you are using it, your Barrage is not going to consume charges by itself, but still will repeat the skills. That's pretty good because that way you'll keep your charges to use Lightning Spear and Stormlance. I'm currently not a big fan of Barrage and I don't think it's necessary to play, it's just an additional button that you can click if you prefer it. Having quality right here could be pretty nice too, but I'm not really investing into it, as you can see right here. And the last gem which I'm currently not using is Wind Dancer, but in some situation Wind Dancer or even Ghost Dance could be an option if you have even more spirit than me, or if you're not playing custom critical. If you're playing Combat Frenzy, you will probably have a lot of additional spirit, so I currently would have 67 more, so I can run Wind Dancer and Ghost Dance in the last socket with Combat Frenzy. So if you're playing cheaper setup but your spirit is high, make sure you're using Wind Dancer and Ghost Dance for it. Ghost Dance also been bugged for some time and we will still waiting for proper fixes. If it's not working for you currently, make sure that you're not using it. Sometimes it could not regenerate your energy shield. There's also another great way to generate charges. You can use both Custom Critical and Combat Frenzy at the same time. And for Combat Frenzy, we will need to keep Electrocution, but we can do that without using Kitoko Gloves. That way you can just run Electrocute on your Herald of Thunder. So Innervate, Deadly Herald and Electrocute. That way your Herald of Thunder is going to electrocute enemies pretty often if you have enough damage. And Combat Frenzy is just going to provide you with the rest of the bonuses. Custom Critical is staying in the setup and will be used when you're fighting single target enemies without a lot of issues. If you don't have enough spirit, you can pretty much off Custom Critical and just run Combat Frenzy. And when you're going to fight a boss or a pinnacle or something like that, you can off Combat Frenzy and activate Custom Critical instead. Now let's talk about our Ascendancy and skill tree in general. So first off, a pretty important part right here is the Ascendancy itself. We are using Sunder my enemies because that way all our critical hits will ignore non-negative enemy monster element resistance. It's going to help with killing rares, it's going to help with bosses and in so many occasions. It also stacks absolutely amazingly with Ambush because that way we have 100% critical hit chance. And as the next part, we're obviously using Lead Me Through Grace because Lead Me Through Grace is going to provide so much spirit for the build. It's stacking pretty well with everything and I definitely recommend to use it. We're also running Under Thunder because that way you'll gain 10% of damage as extra lightning damage and we will also have a magnitude of shocks we inflict, which is pretty good too. And the last Ascendancy could be different and that depends on what you prefer. Currently, there are 3 options. You can run Meditate, because that way you will be able to overcharge your shield. But important part for Meditate, it's not working with Eternal Youth right now. So if you're using Meditate, you will heavily rely on it. And it could be an issue in many cases, so I prefer not to use it. You can also use Soul Spring Eternal, because if you're currently running Custom Critical, it will be just used more often with Soul Spring Eternal. But energy generally not a big issue for the build, that way Soul Spring Eternal is not providing crazy bonuses. And the last part is one of my favorites, is just Unbound Avatar. Unbound Avatar provides a lot of damage against almost everything in the current game. If you're clicking it constantly, I think Unbound Avatar is absolutely worth it. And is probably the best option out of everything we have, because it can give a lot of damage by itself. So talking about the tree, it is very simple. We're going to play Chaos Inoculation, so maximum life is 1, immune to chaos damage and bleeding. And we'll need to stack a lot of energy shield for it. My current energy shield is around 7,600, which is pretty good, but I think it can go up to 10k if I will level up a few more levels and change a few more items. So in the tree, we're just going to the right and we're taking Eternal Youth for regeneration. I think using life regeneration through Flask is still a very great idea and I definitely recommend to use it. Because that way you also can get higher recovery rate on the Flask, or for example utilize the belt with Flask recovery applied instantly. After that, there's also a very important node that I need to cover. It's Icebreaker. Currently, Icebreaker, it gives you gain 50% of maximum energy shield as additional freeze threshold. That's probably the only way how we can save ourselves from being frozen constantly while playing CI. And if you're going to use it, we're going to have better freeze threshold than most of the live base builds, so it will be very hard to freeze us. And I definitely recommend to spend those 4 points. I've been trying a few different options to avoid freezing, but Icebreaker currently is the best one for it. And another question is stun. If you're playing on a budget, I recommend to go right here and take self-mortification, because it's going to work pretty good for you. So in the budget setup, running self-mortification together with asceticism, in my opinion, is absolutely mandatory to avoid getting stunned. You can just path right here, take both of those nodes, and probably take critical exploit to the left as well. But in the most expensive setup that I'm currently running, I don't think running both of those nodes are necessary. Instead, I'm just running duels with gain additional stun threshold, again, equal to 10% of maximum energy shield. Say, GGG pretty much buffed those duels, so they can roll up to 15% right now, so it will be even easier for you to stack a proper threshold. Yeah, there are about 5 of them, and all of them has maximum energy shield as stun threshold. Most of the duels I'm currently using are pretty much old, so it's like 9 or 10%. If you will be able to roll new ones like that, like 13, 12 or 15 even, it's going to feel better. The rest of the things on the duels is just running basic setups such as energy shield, such as elemental damage, and any additional bonus that you like. Running critical could be a pretty nice idea too, so for example I have one with critical damage right here. So if you can afford them, I recommend to do that. If you cannot, just go for self-mortification, it's going to be the best option. We're also picking crit right here at the start, we're going for mindful awareness, going to the right, and taking all critical nodes here. Since we are using Heart of Thunder, running Coming Calamity is a great idea, and I think passing up to the left, up to Cooked, is pretty good idea too. You're losing some energy shield, but it's providing huge critical damage bonus, and I think it's worth it. I'm also taking last sockets to the left and all points for spears. You can also utilize acceleration if you have more points just for movement speed, but I feel like skill speed is not really that necessary for playing spears because you don't really need to attack faster. And if you're running Kitoko, there is some point to utilize electrocution, so only 4 points for better build up and for additional damage against electrocuted enemies. So in case if you're running Kitoko, I definitely recommend to at least try that. So otherwise the tree itself is very simple, there's not a lot of things to explain, and that's pretty much it. Make sure you're taking all the crit possible, and at higher level you will be able to take more evasion and energy shield bonuses too. Another important part is how we are getting evasion. I currently don't have a very high one, but 40% evasion still feels pretty good. With more points invested and a little better helmet, I think I can have up to 50%, maybe even 55% with my current setup. So we are getting all our evasion from Subterfuge Mask. And I'm currently not recommending to pass it, and I recommend to just buff it on your amulet, so allocate Subterfuge Mask. You will need to use oils for that, such as Ire, Suffering and Paranoia, as you can see on my screen right now. However, if you don't have enough currency for it, I recommend to just pass right here through your tree and maybe taking Blinding Strike in the process as well. So now let's discuss our items. And for items, there's a few cool things that I'm going to showcase. First off, we can use Focus in our second hand compared to our main hand. I recommend Focus with high lightning damage because it's going to give you up to 20% of damage for your lightning spear, which is absolutely amazing. You can also fix resistances or mana on your Focus and get a very decent energy shield from it. So generally, go get Focus with lightning damage, some energy shield on it, and proper resistances or mana. And as your main spear, you just need to get Sea Glass Spear. It's pretty important because you will need at least 10% of critical hit chance on your spear. That way it will be much easier to max your crit chance, and the rest of the stats are not going to play such a big role. I'm currently running one with critical damage bonus, but you can also run elemental damage to attacks there and just focus on DPS. As the helmet, we just need a helmet with as high energy shield as possible, so try to aim for the maximum right here up to 500. So the rest of the stats on your helmet is not playing that big overall, and you can pretty much get some intelligence in here. Please keep in mind that you will need a pretty huge intelligence to run Blink and to run high energy shield items. So at least 190 dexterity for level 19 gem for your skills such as Lightning Spear or Storm Lance, and you will also need to get intelligence. So that build is pretty much very stat hungry. Make sure that you are rolling intelligence and dexterity on your items constantly and literally everywhere. Another thing that could help with it is pretty much going for ingenuity. I currently don't need that, but 25 intelligence right here could be very helpful for you. So focusing on the rest of the setup, if you're going to run the helmet, just make sure that you have a lot of energy shield. For the body armor, I just recommend energy shield as well. If you can get some resistances on it, it would be perfect, but just reaching higher number is probably the most important. For the boots, I'm running 30% increased movement speed. If you can run 35, it will be even better, with some resistances and intelligence again. At the belt, we're just aiming for mana and resistances too. For the gloves, you need to get physical damage and lightning damage here, because it's going to provide a lot of damage for your build in general and going to be pretty nice. So make sure you got this. If you can get some resistances and intelligence or dexterity on top, again, it's going to help you too. At the rings, I'm just running lightning damage together with mana and rarity and some resistances. As you can see, I have a very bad implicit right here, it's cast speed, so some of the rings could be harder to get. And for the last ring, I'm running just dexterity and resistances again, without a lot of changes. If you take in Icebreaker, I think running Charm against the freeze is not that important, and you can run anti-stun Charm. But I'm still currently using that one because I've been using it for a very long time and I just prefer it. For the Flask, I'm running very basic setups such as increased amount recovered and increased charge gained, and increased charge gained and increased recovery rate. You can run one of the flasks with instant recovery such as Life Flask, but I prefer to have a higher number right now and get some flask recovery applied instantly through my belt. So that's the main setup for the items. If you're just starting and your budget is low, I just recommend you to focus on a very good helmet and try to get as good spear and gloves as possible, because that way you will be able to clear and farm without a lot of issues. So right now, Spearmon can provide an amazing clear, just destroying the whole screen with one tap. And you will still have a lot of tankiness and will be able to face tank things that most of the other classes just cannot. I think the only downside is not amazing single target, but it's still pretty decent and you can kill all the pinnacles with it if your gear is good enough, so it's definitely worth investing in it. I'm probably going to update build a little later if there are going to be some changes for items or some cool new tags that I will be able to find. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you will have an amazing time with it. See you next time, and ronarray out.